Well, good morning. Um, Thank you very much for tuning in. If you are, um, it's another day of this particular painting. Sorry for the slightly late start. It's a technical hitch. Um, I'd started one live video and then it didn't seem to be able to be watched. But I didn't know what was going on. I just wanted to make sure it was actually going. Um, Right, I went to look at the camera before I start because I've got the camera nicely positioned because I'm actually working on a desk this morning because it's going to be the finer, closer parts of this these faces, and this was the easier setup. Working from this drawing, and also I'm going to just try this. It might work. Yes, I have my mirror here for reference of my own face, and if I can tilt that, I can see that, and so can you, I think. So I can sort of talk to you, and I can use it to take reference for this face. If I just buff it up. A special, oh lovely, life drawing doorstop. There we are. And that will be, if I need extra reference for this face, then it will do it. But I'm not sure I'm going to be actually able to have that in the picture without this part going out of focus. So I'm going to move this mirror in a second, have it in my eye line and not yours. Yes, it's nice to see. This is a bit of an easier way to do it, but without moving the camera actually. And you get to see my lovely ceiling. But I'll move this out of the way so it doesn't go out of focus for you. I'll be able to glance at that if I need to. It's sort of in an emergency, I don't know what to do situation when the picture is when I need my next move in the picture. I'm just going to move this down slightly closer so you get a better view. And this is what I've done the last two demonstrations, where we've got quite a close area to get into, and I just want to make sure it's actually, you can actually see all the crusts of paint, because that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned. With making marks. Now it's kind of now about with this picture, it's about describing the closer areas, and I'm kind of going to be combining pencil. This has been an oil. This is an oil painting, by the way. If you've not been watching the last couple of times. And now I'm kind of, my half plan, so I never really have a full plan, is to let the marks dictate what goes on, and keep on building up the description. And this part is the sort of, I've done the big chunky marks that you could see before, and now I need something to contrast with those. So I've got a mixture of, well, it's a kind of off-white I've got on this brush. And this is something else I can kind of sculpt out what I've already drawn. Thank you all for watching. I hope you can hear me, by the way. If you can't, please comment on it. It's a good little way to test things out, but it's I'm getting quite. It's a reliable equipment. This. And then I remember last time it was we left it at this face where I was thinking he looked a bit. Oh, thank you, Kevin. Loud and clear. Very kind. Thank you all for watching. And the nice thing about this oil paint is you can sort of move it around along with the pencil as it comes out. Just need to position my mirror down there. This chunk I've just put on can be sort of smudged around. And I have a kind of approach where I fiddle about until I like it. And it's not me doing something to accommodate the situation. It's what I always do. So it's a question of gradually. And there's a face lurking there underneath all the within all the crusts I've done. Usually it's a sort of combination of, it ends up being a combination of the drawing, my own face from the mirror, and what has been put down in the early stages. I just need to keep an eye on what reference I've got. I should put the drawing in. I'm actually going to fold him round. I don't want him to take up too much position. There's the little drawing, and I think he probably wants a little bit of masking tape. Got my masking tape just underneath here. It's all coming together now, the work area. And really it's a case of, if I can, as I go, adapt the situation to what is presented to me. Now that face is I've really got more detail in the new painted face. So it's a question of, I think there's just drawing wise, there's too much on this right hand side that I've put down, so I'd like to actually obliterate some of this and sort of sculpt his head back to being more like the drawing. But that drawing really can be a guide. Better just have a sip of coffee. Oh, it does help to focus my brain and wake it up. There's usually a lovely moment if I'm painting in the morning where it's a kind of mental clarity, and each stroke of the brush or the pencil will be it will feel like writing a word, and I can use that metaphor. I think that's the right word. Now this oil paint was some of it was placed on last week, and this painting I really have done nothing to over the week. But this is dry to the touch, and oil paint will tend to be about dry in about 3 days, dry to the touch anyway. It takes 6 months to dry fully, though, to oxidize fully, and it dries in a different way to water-based paints. They will have, the water in the paint will evaporate in water-based paints, and that's the drying process. So when it's dry to the touch, it's totally dry. The only sort of the practical thing is with oil paints, if you've got paint that's really been thickly applied, then if you varnish it when it's wet, it will be like just sealing the tube of paint, so it will never dry. And you'll have this kind of it does go sticky, I'm told, and it's kind of like wet paint squodging around underneath the varnish. Now he's got lower hair. What I can. Got sort of streak down there. The nice thing about the pencil kind of half mixes in with the paint and the solvent, and it gets pushed around in ways I don't expect. So I'll sort of I'll create a problem for myself, and then have to solve it. It is nice to be working on a table actually for the. I don't always do this, but I thought it would be the best way for the placing of the camera phone just above, so it was nice and still, and you can see the see all the crusty bits. I like a good crusty bit. Now this picture will be one of my finished pictures. It's not a special demonstration piece, so it's this is really a normal day. The only for me normal day's painting. It's just pretty much 30 centimeters by 25 centimeters painting. By the way, if you're looking on my website currently, if you search for it, the search won't work, I'm afraid, because I've recently upgraded the website to have to be more secure with HTTPS. But if you currently search for it, there is oliverlovely.com and www.oliverlovely.com. Now, www.oliverlovely.com is the one you want. So you'll actually have to type that into the URL bar at the top to get it, which is frustrating at the moment, but it's a little problem that's been to and fro between my domain provider and my website provider, which I don't fully understand. I'm getting a bit boring, but I'm sure it will sort itself out soon. But the website is there, yes, https://www.oliverlovely.com. It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? He's in danger of being a bit low in colour, but I never like to use too much colour, and I'm just squeezing a little bit of excuse me, a little bit of I think it's cadmium red. I just think of them as sort of, I see the colours visually, and it's sort of like red, yellow, blue. And someone asks me in a class, "Oh, how do you mix burnt sienna or umber or something?" Oh, well, you've got to sort of experiment on your own, I'm afraid. So I don't have that knowledge to my fingertips. It's trial and error as far as I'm concerned. And there's 3 colours. It's the primary colours, yellow, red and blue. And you can get every colour you need out of those. It's just there are different types of primary colour. Different shades. And like if you've got a lovely blue sky like there is just above me out of the window, that blue, you won't get that blue ever from, for instance, ultramarine. What you need is the cobalt, or that the cobalt type of blue from the in the tube, and they're all from different types of pigments, ground up stuff. Now this is just a little bit. I've mixed a slight amount of red and yellow, and then dulled it down with a bit of, and it's got sort of the white, the standard white kind of whitened solvent within it. So if I can keep control of the colour very closely, I can just pop in a small amount of colour here and there, and the face is always, or most often, the face will be the place where the action happens on the person. Certainly if it's a person, and the face is the first thing you go to naturally, I think. And if I can control where the viewer looks, you've got surrounding, it's down here, surrounding bigger marks than in on the face. These marks are large and those are finer, and that is a kind of formula that I find works. And it just because it mimics, it's reality really. If you look at the world around you, then you've got the wall, for instance. I'm just looking, which is quite uneventful, and then something like your hand is a strong contrast. There's just more marks within the hand, more explanation of what's going on. And that eye is looking a bit. So kind of balance this between what looks, what I think looks right, and what I think looks elegant on the page. And it's not really something I can always explain. It's something that happens to me in a way. But I've got drawing experience to the point that I am doing this particular piece of work. I've drawn many drawings, and that has been rehearsal for this. And all the moves I'm making are based on how I can read the reference. And this drawing was done in about, it was 2 figures, and it was drawn in about 10 minutes possibly slightly less, because it was sitting in a pub in the Pottle of Blues Micropub in Beeston. It's a very nice place when it reopens. And then these marks are kind of now translatable, and what is the paint version of my pencil mark? And a lot of these would consciously about them. It was interesting when I did the Pint of Science event for the first time with Nottingham University. We had a kind of preview evening at the Nottingham Contemporary, where I was talking about the painting I'd done with in collaboration with psychologists. Well, I hope I get it right. A psychologist and a behavioural psychologist at the Institute of Mental Health, and I was talking about the unconscious and drawing and unconsciously, and really, and then someone who was obviously in the field afterwards was talking about how it was actually Sigmund Freud who pretty much came up with that idea, and they were talking about a lot of the ideas of Sigmund Freud have been so easily accepted into common knowledge that he's not actually given the credit for it. But it sort of, I was talking about it, and then I said happily afterwards, like, so, oh, I don't really think much of Sigmund Freud. I said, well, you were talking about the unconscious, and he came up with that, you know. It's a lovely thing to be able to rely on the unconscious and decisions that you're not actually. You can observe them happening, and there's the idea that life is a kind of being awake and conscious is a kind of dream. You're constantly dreaming. Excuse me, I'm just going to get up and get a cloth. Ooh, a dirty rag to have to wipe the paintbrush onto. With a sip of coffee, I think. Oh. And then he's looking a bit more older anyway. He's got a bit more ravaged, I suppose. He's developed a few wrinkles, but they're always, you can always just obliterate them. And I mean, in this, the mouth and the eyes are the biggest draw, or the area around the moustache anyway. It's not really, but the mouth hasn't been drawn. You kind of assume it's there. These marks with this rigger brush gives you an idea of how finely I'm working now. The rigger brush will help up to a point, but it'll be too thick at a certain stage, and I will have to go in with something a bit more improvisational. Improvisational, yes. Don't usually say that way, and I'm not even sure if it's a word. Like, yes, an example of this would be it's more of a DIY tool, which is I use for framing, but I might go in with just popping this under the camera, the awl. Yeah, sort of just a normal wood awl, to do a little pinprick. That is the or even a pin. That's the difference between the awl end and the brush end. These lovely crusts that develop, they will, when that's actually dried to the touch, it will be a bit of a different experience visually, because it's catching the light now. I'm right next to a window with the lovely sunlight to light my way, but on the actual phone image I can see it's catching the light, and that won't happen. It'll be more of a matte matte finish. It's amazing how in comparison with a white skin, like dead white, not any shade of brown or with a living, more of a living colour. The dead white just tells you that the person is dead, and then you're into a kind of preconceived world. Or watch film wise, I mean, completely white face used in horror films, but you also see them in black and white silent films, and it comforting feeling that you see a made up white, perfectly white face. But in a kind of real life pub situation, the people will tend to have a more of a living colour to their faces. In all shades of skin, I think really you can have a underpinning of I like to have a pot of solvent or water, depending on what type of paint I'm using, but thinned down, kind of milky brown, milky kind of sienna, really, and use that as the starting point for any shade of skin, like Caucasian or darker skin, and it's a method to start with. It can give the face a bit more more of a living quality, so everyone's not sitting there looking like they've got cholera. These are the kind of introspective questions I ask myself while I'm painting. Sometimes I'll be listening to an audio book, and I've been listening to a lot of William Burroughs lately, audiobooks. And I do like the visual aspect of this stuff. You get it jumps around as well. It's lovely to think of that you're kind of being guided with the paint by words. I like the idea that you can see how the more solid, opaque areas there, they're sort of obliterating some of these wrinkled areas. If you just go in with a pencil and do a blanket job on the whole face, everywhere's got wrinkles, and everywhere, if you do a blanket job with anything, with any method, it's the same material or the same type of material. The different types of skin on the face will they look different because they're doing different jobs. And the crinkling skin around the eye, it's soft. It's certainly softer when I'm looking at my skin in the mirror. It's softer around the eye than on the nose, for instance, and the nose is a different, you could call it a different material, but if you can start with that idea, all marks can translate as a different type of material when you're looking at them on the paper, because or on the board. That's what I'm painting on today. It's if you can observe these marks in reality and then find a way to translate them into your own marks, then you'll be able to control what is being seen on the page or the board. And you can go down that control route to many different degrees. You can dominate the visual landscape to the point that you're drawing like a photo, and that is one extreme. Then another extreme is really something more like big chunky impressionistic marks. You can think of them as, or abstract painting, and it's all marks, and it's all trying to explain things as if you were explaining in words. I like the way he's coming on. I'm going to have a move over slightly to the other figure. I think this one is definite. It started out as a male, and it's not going to change. I think the beard dictated that from the outset. Let's just zoom out a bit and have a look at both the figures and how they're doing. Move this down slightly. You have to keep looking and checking. If you just go into a little corner of the painting and start working without that check happening, I'll appear on the camera again. There we go. This is a nice way to do it, is with the mirror. I'm looking in this for reference. I may do this in other videos. But yes, but as you can see, that bit goes out of the background goes out of focus when I'm in, so I won't stay in. Leave that on the side. Right, I'll take it into this figure, which is a lot more, certainly a contrast to him. And that figure, I mean, from what I take of that, it's kind of it's looking downward. Nice little crust where the solvent has run down. You can see that area. It's all working, different parts working in contrast to each other, and it's visually exciting, I think, when you've got a lot of different marks. And that's the other figure. And really, there isn't much else to. You can see why it's developed that way, because it's just take that up slightly, because you've got rather large strokes doing the describing. So I need to now. Excuse me, sip of water. I need to now find a way to get something else out of this. Now I can I can sort of see that there's a head of sorts just there, which I need to, I think it'd be nice to bring that out. Catching the light on the image on the camera. Oh, it's a lovely day out there. So if you look out the window and look at, just if you want an illustration of what colour can do on a warmer day when there's a lot of light, there's more colour because there's more light getting to your eye. And that's a good little trick to be able to describe if you're doing a landscape. It's a hot, warm day with lots of light, then lots of bright colours, and the viewer will realise that. Now it's quite a complicated structure of crusty bits within this head. I want to make sure I make good use of all these these finer parts that I've put in the drawing. But this figure, I think, was looking down and reading. And this close-up painting is a bit more demanding physically. It takes I sort of need to slow things down hand movement wise. And just put parts down and then remove them. Really, that's what I often do. I'll come around from this way. Possibly a bit of pencil. I think I need to actually, it's difficult to get into the right position for my head, but I can lean it up against something and actually look down, because it's no good me drawing from my face if I'm not looking down. But I'm looking in the mirror now, and it's trying to mimic the supposed the head movement that I've decided. I'll just move this down slightly so you can get a more centralised view, and I think you get less shine from that. It's a question of just looking and asking myself whereabouts the dark parts are. It's a good way to make a start, really. It's where are the dark parts? And if you're drawing in a sketchbook, certainly it's a good way to get some. And you're on a clock. You need to, if you can make things blurry quickly. If you are short-sighted, remove your glasses or tilt your glasses and draw. Draw the simplified version. But if you have 20/20 vision, or better vision, then you can actually squint at the subject, and that will simplify things. You can flip between ways of seeing reality and try and control. You can choose to look only at colours, and if you can squint at a very colourful scene of flowers, say, you can translate that as just lots of blobs of colour. I'm just asking myself, what was this meant to be when I drew this? And something like an arm, but it doesn't have to be totally explained when you're making the translation into paint. But certainly in the right position for the arms. Obviously with some kind of shaded area underneath. Very obvious things that you can sort of lapse into are when you're putting pencil lines in or anything with a fine edge, is to put lines all around the outline of a picture and kind of frame it in a way, and that will, it's doing the same thing everywhere, and that's the enemy of variety, where you've got a lot of different types of, you've certainly got hair, clothes and skin, you can assume, if it's a figure. So there's a lot of different folds of face and hair and skin, and this is I don't want this to look like a photo at the end, but it would be nice if all of those textures can kind of merge into each other and live happily together, as if the person is forming in front of your eyes. A kind of living animation, or a single image animation. I don't know what that's sort of blue, looks like a big blue eye at the moment, but I think I might sort of go over that with a kind of, when you've got thinned down paints like this in a suspended in a solvent, you can sort of move them about. I'm going to try blowing that if I can get through to it. Shaking the phone a bit. It just sort of sets it when you do that. sometimes it does a lot, and sometimes it doesn't, and it can kind of destroy what's there, take parts away. But all of these funny marks are, all of these methods are still drawing. I'm still looking. It's window dressing for the drawing. The drawing is the most important aspect, because otherwise you haven't got the knowledge in your mind to start with. You need, and I've just been leaning in the other half of what I've done. You haven't got the knowledge in your mind to, it's not recorded for you visually, and if you can recall certain things, then you'll have prejudices and you'll be putting those in the picture before what you can really see. And it's a good example to use. I'll just move this camera up a bit. If you have you're trying to draw, a hand, you can sort of think, well, I know what a hand looks like, but then what's that? How do you draw that? It doesn't look like anything, and you have to have the thing in front of you to be able to draw it. It looks sort of like an animal sometimes. It's just sort of several big blobs, but even the hand there, if it's just even slightly tilted, the fingers actually take up more space than the main piece holding the fingers. But even that, classic hand shape has got little idiosyncrasies that I couldn't begin to just sit down and draw it without having it in front of me. Ooh, I think I've rotated around. You might have flipped around then. Oh, I can't turn that. I guess a little warning, you can't turn your phone while live. Didn't know that. Let's have another look. I think we're getting close to. Actually, I was slightly late starting, so I won't. I'll go for an hour this morning, but not longer than an hour. Let's move that out of the way and get a good view of the whole thing. I think it's they're gradually getting a bit more character to them, but as far as I'm concerned, this is the hardest stage when you and every move you make is so delicate. You have to be so sort of. It's more physically demanding. Well, as it doesn't look like it should be when you're actually sitting there painting and you're watching someone painting. You can think, oh, well, what's what they're moaning about? It looks easy. But in art classes, you'll get halfway through, people will just lean back in their chair and go and sigh from exhaustion. And quite rightly, because that's what they should be doing, because it is difficult and it's physically demanding. It's more like going to the gym. The idea that it's a relaxing pursuit is a myth. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's I'm on edge all the time. I'm looking out for the next move, and I can't let things drop. And if for some reason I'm tired or slightly ill or something, and I let my concentration go, or I'm not aware that something's happening in the picture, then I will not be doing myself any favours. And these crusts are kind of like layers of skin or muscle, and they can build up to a hole. You can use them to layer the next part of paint on. I need the reference again. That's what I've done with my masking tape. Hmm. I apologise if it's slightly frustrating to watch me put marks down and then obliterate them. But this is the way this is my method, and I can't do anything else. But it gradually gets there. I think if you can think of it as like you're artificially aging a face or whatever you're doing, then it's a nice way to think about it. You putting layers on, then slightly removing them to show the passage of time. And if paint can run over layers of dried paint again and again, you've got something that looks old or looks used. Now that smudge mark there that I've just done with the cotton bud, it's I like the way that's contrasting with the rest of the parts. The sort of more crisp marks, and then a smudge will be quite an interesting one. So it's visual contrasts, different marks working next door to each other. And if you've got sort of doodling pad next to you with a pen, if you just try doing even if you've got a biro, a line and then a little area, and sort of breathe on the end of your finger and smudge it round next to the line, and then do some dots, you can see what I'm talking about with marks. They work in contrast to each other and mimic reality. And then you can think which ones of those marks would be most appropriate to record leaves on a tree, or a featureless sky, and the sky with a smudge would I think the smudge would be much more appropriate for the sky, because there's nothing going on in the sky. In terms of when you hear the phrase narrative in a painting, it's just referring to sort of if there's some kind of story, like, and you can call it what you want. The narrative of this could be there's two figures sitting next to each other. Why has this person got this expression? Has the other one said something to them? Is this one upset because this one is nothing more than a sort of ill-defined blob of paint? Now, just so I thought I'll do a kind of lip shape there, because I saw a kind of crust in the lip. I'm gonna make that a bit. Usually like to, if you can put a tiny little bit of, not bright red, but the shade of paint you were using with a tiny bit of red. Now this will probably be a bit too much. I'll have to, actually I'll do it on the cloth. That's such a small area though. Lip one could be, but they can never just be, when you're getting into these fine details, if I, in the way I do it, just blob them on and hope for the best, then it has no living quality to it. It's got to be convincingly slightly sort of used, and it's not from a production line. It's a real person with individual life, living their life. So it's not something to be trifled with when you're developing it. When it's a character that's developing, I want this person to have a kind of the quality that they're telling me they want when it gets to this stage, and I have to listen to that. And it's a lovely stage, this, of the painting, but it's the most demanding, I find. Apart from the initial drawing, actually starting the drawing, I do find that I find that more intimidating than I should, because, and you can hopefully watch those on the previous 2 videos, show this painting from the very start. A couple of weeks ago is when I started this, and this is the 3rd session. Showing it from the initial drawing, and it can be quite quick, the drawing, but there'll need to be a kind of a courageous leap on my part to get started. So self-belief, and the energy has to come from a desire to want to see the painting done. If I don't care about the painting, then that's a very good way not to get started. And the pencil can be used as a kind of rudimentary brush to get yet another type of mark. And these types of marks, you might not see them consciously. The viewer will be seeing the marks in all at once. There'll be something that takes the interest, and that's really how I do things. I'll go for the next interesting thing and paint that. But when you view something, you'll see something first. It's like getting to know a person, a real person, and I will often judge someone based on what they look like and be completely wrong, thankfully. It's a process of me getting to know this face, finding something that I can believe to be a real person, or a sort of remnant of a real person. Was whatever moved me to draw this in the first place. Let's make that over again. Whatever sort of inspired me, then I can, if I can find that again, and something extra in this picture, in this painting. It's not just a question of copying this drawing. This drawing is something on its own. It's the starting point of this, and this painting is the reason to do it, is to kind of have the paint version of the pencil drawing. I think if you can find this video and watch the initial stage again, compare it with how it looks now, it will look pretty different, but it's a bit like watching a plant grow. It's not discernible second by second, but and there'll be things that are happening that I'm not aware of, which is such a nice. It's a good feeling when you can sort of rely on that fact. I'm just checking the time, and I think we'll sort of wind this session up, but I shall do another next week, because I haven't finished this yet, and it would be very nice to actually do the whole thing as a demonstration. I will move this slightly up and then bring the mirror in, which is a little. It's a nice, very nice way to talk to you via the mirror. Saves me moving the camera around. But thank you very much for watching. And yes, you can, as far as I know, you can watch the videos again on the lovely fine art page. And if you want to go to the website, as I say, it's actually type. At the moment, there's a link to it just above on the fine art page, so you should be able to find it. But thank you very much for watching, and take care. Have a good weekend, and see you next week with more of this painting. Bye bye.